I'm going to really have to turn deep to deliver this message. We're going to be talking about the orgasm and sexual energy, which is probably one of the greatest deceptions in this three-dimensional realm in history. And we're going to be just, going back in time, giving you a little history on the fall of man and how we've been misguided and misdirected, and how we've been misusing this orgasm and this sexual energy, and what we can do from my perspective, to kind of balance things back off and escape from the purgatory, which is the physical body, which limits us from our original states as stars and gods and light beings. Okay, so this might go a little long. I might do a part 1 and a part 2. Let's jump into it. The history of the fall of man, based on what books or what teaching, what you were brought up in from a young lad will vary. Okay, if you were usually brought up in the United States, a lot of you have studied from the Bible, the Holy Bible. Other parts of the world, India is Hindu, a lot of Middle Eastern is Muslim, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, I'm going to give you reference, the history from a mainstream book that I've had the pleasure of reading twice, and that's just so I can connect. Not that I'm more biased toward the Bible or the Quran, books of Enoch, the hidden tablets. There's so many different books that I've read. I just want to reach as many people as I can when I try to discern these codes and mysteries from 4th level awareness. The history of man, the names that were given was Adam and Eve. And this goes back thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Things were different then, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to visualize this. They didn't have, video back then. Certain words, right? We're in 2016, it's April now. Certain words were not used back then. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have photography. Okay, so there was a certain language back then. There was a certain awareness back then. And in that origin, in that story, Adam and Eve were placed in a 4th dimensional. It had to be 4th dimensional because they had a stronger connection with what we call, a lot of you call now, God. Okay, I'll just leave it at that for now. Or, I'll say a divine presence. Because it'll be hard for me just to say God, me knowing what gods are, which are higher levels of consciousness on higher planes of existence. They are not the divine presence. The divine presence created the presence, the consciousness of everything. The God of the universe, we can say, okay? So Adam and Eve, and in this Bible, is symbolic. It's symbolic. If you read the Bible word for word, with it being a translation from, a couple of different languages, to my understanding. Now, a lot of people say it was Hebrew, but then, historians say it wasn't Hebrew. It was another language. So if you read this book with your carnal mind, meaning your brain, and you try to discern this without any spiritual awareness, you could take it way out of content, and you'll understand how we got to where we are now as a being, as human beings, in this human being form that we're in. How we're way outside of what really happened in perspective. Okay, you'll be able to see how we went all the way on the polarity line one way, all the way to another way, based on the mistranslation of this book. So here you have male and female, fourth dimension, probably a level 1 awareness, because they didn't have a lot of knowledge in that state. You know, this knowledge that we have now, this ability to think. Think of the power that you have now. You can think, you can create, you can fly airplanes, you could ride bicycles, you could log on to the internet, you could create websites, wow. Back then, Adam and Eve were told specific things to do, right? They communicated with the gods back in that time. In the beginning, if you go to the original transcript, I won't say original because I can't prove that it's original. I want to keep this as unbiased as possible. But if you go to some of the older transcripts, it'll say, in the beginning, the Elohim. See, it was translated in the King James Bible to English. And they just said God plural. But the Elohim, if you do your research on that, ladies and gentlemen, it's plural, and it's masculine and feminine. And this is what blew me away on my journey. I said, wow, gods and goddesses in the beginning? Whole nother podcast. We're going to get into the goddess that have been forgotten about and buried for the intent and the greed and the lust of man. Okay? But in the beginning, the Elohim created. Okay? Man and woman. And if you just go back and look at nature, you know, the way I stay centered and the way all of this makes sense to me, and I can stay centered and I can vibrate very, very high about this, is I just look at the universe. If you look out in nature, it's always male and female. All right? This is how you stay centered. You use nature to center you. And the Bible goes on into this story about the fall of man. The man told that they could do whatever they wanted to do on this earth. I'm just being broad I don't want to take 15 minutes on this, one part. They could do whatever, they could go to and from, right? They had free will. They could do whatever they wanted to do in this space, this fourth dimensional space, this garden. He said, look, just do not partake in the fruit of good and evil. Don't mess with it. Okay, now if you read in this book, Carnal, you will visualize two trees. One tree with a bunch of apples, right? That's the story that's been passed down. Because you're telling this story to little kids. You understand what I'm saying? You got to understand the intent behind the teaching. You want to teach in the simplicity so people can at least get the download to know that this is where man started. It's a story, just like, you tell little fairy tales. I mean, we don't intend on, deceiving our kids, but, we do the best that we can with what we have. So a lot of people picture a man and a woman in a garden, and there's two trees, and they're eating from one tree, and that's all that exists, because that's all this book said. But you have to learn how to use what that divine presence gave you, that ability to co-create. You pull it up for yourself and look around and see what you see and experience a man and a woman in a space with free reign. Right? He said, just don't partake in the fruit of the tree of good and knowledge. Now I'm going to, good and evil, Now I'm going to discern that. Okay? Now we're going to touch back on our topic. The orgasm, sexual energy. Because in this time, back in Adam and Eve, right, they were placed in that space by the gods. Okay? At that time, man and woman could not co-create. The gods placed them there. The gods had the power to create life in the third dimension, the physical dimension. At that time it was the fourth dimension. I got off track a little bit. In the fourth dimension, which is a little higher vibrating than the third dimension that we're in now. So what happened is, and if you read that book, right, Adam and Eve got to know each other. Now remember, back in those times, they didn't use words like we use now. They couldn't put, sexual behaviors in that holy Bible back then. So it's a code. You have to know what they got to know each other. When they knew each other, they became ashamed. Right? Think about it. Right? Let's discern it. Let's keep it. It is what it is, whether you believe it or not. Once they got to know each other, they became ashamed. Ladies and gentlemen, they didn't bite an apple and became ashamed because, they ate the apple and they weren't supposed to eat the apple. What does the apple or the fruit have to do with being naked? Knowing that they were naked. Are you guys with me? Even now, the forbidden fruit is sexual, ladies and gentlemen. It's sexual. The fall of man was sexual. And what happened was they got to know each other. They experienced that sex. And they went past the threshold. Okay? And they disobeyed the gods. They had the orgasm. They experienced the sexual energy. It's gonna get a little loud now. This is live uncut. Airplane flying above us. We'll let it go a little bit. They experienced that orgasm, and after that orgasm, they knew they had disobeyed the Elohim, the gods. And as soon as that divine presence left their bodies, see, that orgasm is made up of the divine presence of what you call God. It's the closest that you can get to God. And after their orgasm, as they release that sexual energy, they knew, they were aware of their physical bodies. That higher presence of I amness, of oneness with the divine presence of God was lost. Are you guys following me? That's how they knew they were naked. They were missing something. What was missing? What went out of their bodies? The sexual energy. That's your connection to God, sexual energy, okay? And immediately, as you read that story, they were cast out of that space, that fourth dimensional higher realm. And they were cast down to what we know now. This is the fall of man. And I'm going fast because I got a lot to talk about. And I don't want it, to go for hours and hours on this subject. I just want to let you know where it came from and what you're dealing with now. All of us are. Okay, we've been misinformed about this. And we have to talk about this in its truest form. When I say truth, I don't mean infallible word, but it is what it is. We know sexual desires is the strongest pull on this planet right now. And it was then also. So now Adam and Eve were cast out of that fourth dimensional realm. And now they're in the third dimensional realm, trapped in a physical body. Spirituality, the spiritual connection, the telepathy. Because if you read that book, they could feel and hear God. They hid from God, right? It was telepathy. They communicated different. They were one with God. So now they're trapped in the physical body with only their physical senses, where you and I are now in this fallen state. The fall of man. We fell from a higher plane, a higher relationship, oneness with God, through the division of our sexual energy. Now we're on this three-dimensional plane, and we're missing that divine presence. Okay? And that's the struggle right now that you and I are going through. I struggled massively with my sexual energy. I was very, 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 very controlled by the orgasm. It controlled, 30 or 35 years of my life. At least. I was molested as a child from this addiction of sexual energy. And this energy could be very, very destructive. It could take you to the lowest vibrational states on the planet. Yes. When it's used incorrectly, which it is, 99% of the time. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I had a little distraction. A cat was actually trying to eat a bird right in front of me. Of course, I had to intervene that. This is Live Uncut Raw. I'm back now, okay? So, I'm going to pick up where I left off. Broad is the way that leads to destruction. And that narrow path is the way that leads to everlasting life or freedom. To reconnect with that divine presence, that universal God. Okay, and it says only a few will find this. And that's what we're going to dig into on this podcast. If you can rise, bring your awareness above this addiction to the sexual energy. Okay, so I'm going to touch on how it's being misused now. A lot of you already know how it's being misused. That's a beautiful, beautiful bird above me. A beautiful cardinal. Thank you for your songs. Thank you for your beautiful melodies. Enjoy these cardinals. Now, as we touched before, sexual energy at one particular time was only distributed and used by the gods. Okay, but when Adam and Eve fell in that fallen state, man began using this sexual energy, which is the orgasm, right? And they were walking the face of the earth in a fallen state, in a very, very low level of awareness. Okay, so they went back to like their animal-like instincts, that barbaric instincts. If you watch animals, right? If you watch animals procreate, it's very barbaric. You watch a lion jump on the lioness, and it's just very barbaric. You watch dogs just, you understand what I'm saying? A pack of dogs, the male dogs, they all just try to mount the female. There's no awareness. They just create. They eat, shit, sleep, and create. And that's the state that mankind, see, at one time, remember that fourth dimension, right? We had a one-on-one connection, right? A higher awareness than the animals. That's what separates us from animals, is our awareness, our ability to think and co-create. We receive this power from the gods, okay? But this power was so strong and such a great, what's the word I want to use, responsibility to have. We weren't ready for it. It just happened, right? And so now in 2016, if you look around, everything is sexually driven. Everything you see on TV is sexually driven, right? Everybody is chasing the feeling you get from sexual energy and the orgasm. It is the main desire. It is the main drive. It is the main will. It is, it is the main intent. Everything that is set up in this dimension, if you really look at it, let's really look at it and touch on it. It's driven by sexual desire. All of the clothing, okay? All of the big houses, all of the cars, your desire to become a multi-millionaire. I mean, you can write down your goals and say, I want to be a millionaire because, but it's to chase, to find your mate, to find someone, to spend the rest of your life with, to attract someone that you can share that sexual energy with. Okay? So, how should this sexual energy be used? Now, this is just my perception, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? I never say that, this is the infallible word of God. That I don't get into that bullshit. I'm just showing you a different perspective. on how to rise above the sexual energy addiction. You can rise above it and learn how to use this energy. It is a very, 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 for some, long and tedious process. But if you find yourself right now addicted to the orgasm, and you can go to the ends of the earth. You can descend so low. Being addicted to the orgasm. They talk about crack cocaine, but crack cocaine is just artificial sexual energy. That's all it is. Ecstasy is just artificially created, which kind of perpetrates this sexual energy from the orgasm. Okay? It is what it is. And I'm telling you, this topic that we're on right here is very, very massive, but most people don't know how to discern it. So if you find yourself right now listening to this podcast and you want to get out of the addiction of this sexual energy, you want to learn how to control this energy and use this energy from a higher perspective that can benefit and help you ascend and reconnect to the divine presence of all that there is, continue to listen. Okay? Because right now you're using it, and I am also. I'm not pointing my finger at anybody. Right now I'm probably about 6 months in of using this energy the right way. That's how new this is. That's how new this information is being channeled to me, and I'm just using these platforms to share with other people who want to ascend and get out of this prison camp, this meat pack that we're trapped in. Because you guys understand how powerful this energy is. Once you spark that sexual energy, you can't stop it. No, you're going to release it. And you're going to release it with whoever is available in many cases. If you're just being honest with yourself, if you go back and look at your life, you have released that sexual energy with people that you feel so shamed about now. Because it wasn't about the person, it was about releasing that sexual energy. You didn't care who it was with. Oh, many times you had to be intoxicated to release that sexual energy, just to justify why you was doing it. Many times you woke up next to somebody, you released that sexual energy, and the next day you felt horrible. Many times you shared that sexual energy with, opposite sexes who you would not have if you were not addicted to releasing the energy. So let's talk about the proper use of the energy real fast, okay? We're already 24 minutes in on this one. I'll probably have to do a part 2. It's okay. Now, the proper use from my perspective of the sexual energy, especially if we're talking about life force energy, is with a husband and a wife. Okay? But I understand now. You have to really understand what a husband and wife is. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna strike that, because husband and wife in 2016 is not what husband and wife was intended to back in the biblical days. Okay? So I'll just say for your soul mate now. I gotta go higher than that. I gotta go all the way to the soul and say for your soul mate. Okay? The proper use of this sexual energy is to connect with life force energy and bring forth life, to co-create with your soulmate, right? To co-create and bring forth life and create and allow a soul to come in from the universe, right? Co-create this, to visualize this, to do this on purpose using this sexual energy. You want to bring in another soul from the universe to enter into this third dimension, right? With the answers, with the message, with the cures from the gods and the divine presence, the angelical presence in the higher dimensions. You want to allow a soul to come through the portal of the one man using this sexual energy, using visualizations, using, right, perfectly I can't even say this word. I know what I want to say. Rhythmatic breathing with your soulmate. and purposely co-create a three-dimensional being, which is a child, and bring them into this portal with the answers that we need for the fallen state that we are in now, to bring that message from angelical beings to us now, to bring that cure for cancer, to bring in that cure for AIDS. Are you guys with me? To bring that cure. See, all of these answers come from higher levels of awareness, from souls that are coming in now. The starseed children, right? And the indigos. They have to come in through that portal. And what happens is, I'm going to get into it in greater detail, when we don't do this purposely, right? What do I mean by purposely? When you're with your soulmate, and I'm going to get into it a little deeper, right? When you're using this sexual energy and it's not animalistic and barbaric, you're not just mounting your girl and you're releasing that energy and y'all fall asleep. When you are in rhythm with your soulmate and you guys are breathing in rhythm and you are exchanging this energy and you are visualizing what you want to create, you're visualizing the child that you want, you're visualizing the sex of that child, and you're connecting with higher levels of awareness, and you are a co-creator. You can bring in your Christ-like anointed child that will eventually take care of you and pass on your seed and help you ascend higher, because they're coming from the universe. These souls are coming in to the third dimension with a message. Okay? That is the proper, in my perspective, the proper way to use this sexual energy. Now, I want you to go over to the part 2 of this, because I'm already on 29 minutes. I don't like to usually go over 30 minutes, and I'm going to pick back up, okay, on part 2.